Hello, everybody. Welcome in to the NBA Front Office Show. I'm Trevor Lane. You can find me on Twitter at Trevor_Lane, joined by Keith Smith at Keith Smith NBA. With the stuff going on in the league today, and by popular request, we figured we would make today's show a live show. So, surprise, if you're joining us from YouTube, you're joining us from Twitter, welcome in. We'll take some questions and comments as we go through. We have a number of topics to dive into today, starting with the big news that had everybody talking. DeAndre Ayton looking like he's going to sign an offer sheet with the Pacers unless some sort of a sign and trade comes together. A lot of discussion about that. Let's start there. Keith, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I finally have new computer equipment, so hopefully we're good today. I think I'm going to knock on wood. Somebody in the chat says, "Show us Tatum." We are in the middle of a really bad thunderstorm, so he is hiding under the kitchen table right now. So sorry for that.
That's a good place to be, though.
Right.
This is fine. That's smart. And meanwhile, we can talk a little bit of Ayton. What's going on here? Now, I put as the headline DeAndre Ayton to the Pacers. I guess we don't know for sure if that's what's going to happen. It seems like, so from what we've heard so far, it's that the Pacers are creating the ability to sign DeAndre Ayton to a max deal. They've decided to waive and stretch a few players in order to do so, in order to have that kind of cap space. The Suns have said they will match that offer, but that offer hasn't been signed yet as of this moment, which in theory gives both sides a chance to still work out a sign and trade. That's pretty much up to date where we're at the moment, correct?
Yeah, I think you're right on it. I think you are pretty well locked in on that. Yeah, in what it sounds like today, the Pacers are going to do an offer sheet if they can't work out some kind of sign and trade. So that's that. You're just kind of reading between the lines a little bit there. I think that's where we're sitting. So I think what we're going to see here is maybe Ayton just rolls into an offer sheet. Then we'll see if the Suns choose to match it or not. We'll see what that looks like. But we'll find out with that. And then if not, then it gets a little more interesting because then it could be a sign and trade possibility, which would send some stuff back to Phoenix, which is good because we haven't seen the Suns do anything of note yet, right? They've re-signed Bismack Biyombo. They signed a couple other guys to minimums, but they need something at the 5. I don't think you can compete for a title with Bismack Biyombo as your starting center. And right now, I think only center on the roster, so that's a little bit of a problem. So let's see. Woj's report was that they would match. So is that posturing? Is that negotiating through the media? We're going to find out here. I think let's say if nothing else within the next 2 days, probably, right?
This is my guess, and that's all this is. But just because that we were at this point now, my guess is that they probably had conversations on a sign and trade, and the things that Phoenix was offering weren't things that the Pacers wanted, and the things the Pacers wanted weren't things that Phoenix was. Well, flip that, right? The two sides just didn't agree on what was going to be in a sign and trade. So the Pacers just said, well, fine. Well, we don't need you then. We'll just sign him to an offer sheet and you guys are going to lose him for nothing. And then the Suns responded, oh, no. We're just going to match, right? They're both playing their own leverage to get what it is that they want here. I think part of the leverage of the Suns in this situation, it's kind of evaporated because typically we see this happen early in free agency when there's a lot of other guys that are out on the market. And so part of the deterrent to send out an offer sheet to a player like this is that your cap space is tied up for that 48-hour period and you can miss out on other guys. There's tumbleweeds rolling through NBA free agency right now. So it's not like the Pacers are missing out on signing other guys if they do sign it into an offer sheet and the Suns wait that full 48 hours before deciding whether or not to match.
Exactly. And so just a couple mechanics of this, because I know people are asking a lot of questions on Twitter. So in order to sign Ayton to an offer sheet, you have to have the cap space at the time of the offer sheet signing. It's not one of those things where, hey, sign it and we'll figure it out if they don't match. It has to be done at the time of the offer sheet signing. The easiest way for the Pacers to get there was by waiving and stretching a handful of players. So they're going to waive Dwayne Washington. He was fully non-guaranteed. So that's a that's a complete savings. That takes that obligation down to zero. Then 3 of the guys they got in the Boston Celtics trade, Malik Fitz, Juwan Morgan, and Nick Stauskas, they all had to be partially guaranteed. It's like, call it, it's like $1.5 million for both Morgan and Fitz, and then it's about $2 million for Stauskas. They're going to waive and stretch all 3 of those guys. So they'll take on $500,000 for each of Fitz and Morgan, and they'll take on about $700,000 for each of the next 3 years for those other guys. And then what that will do is that will free up the cap space to offer it. Now, if the Suns match, the Pacers can't say, okay, oh, well, you matched. We want all those guys back. They could re-sign them. The challenge with that, though, is with stretches, that becomes a whole issue down the line. So that's not really going to be a thing either. So that becomes a thing. You can't undo a waiver because your offer sheet got matched. If you renounce to free agent, you could actually undo that. That is a process where if you renounce a player to sign someone to an offer sheet, you can then unrenounce them, I guess, or re-renounce. I don't know. Right. Renounce, renounce. Like, yeah, who knows?
You're right.
But anyway, that becomes a whole thing there. So I think what we're really looking at in this situation is those guys will get waived. Honestly, I don't know if any of them were going to stick anyway in Indiana. We'll see with that, but those guys are all going to get waived. They're going to create this, and then we see what happens with Phoenix. Maybe this forces a sign and trade. Maybe this says, nah, let's hold on, let's wait, and then we'll see where this goes from there. Let's see if we match. Do we take the full 2 days? Taking the full 2 days, to the point you made earlier, there's not a real strategic reason to do that anymore. Nobody's competing for free agents anymore. So just, if you're going to match, just match and go.
So let's say the Suns do match.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're not going to, like, you can't trade Ayton to the Pacers for a year.
Correct.
And they can't trade Ayton. What are exactly the rules? They can't trade Ayton for, 6 months?
It'll be January 15th. So it'll be the January 15th restriction because of how much of a raise he's going to get on the new contract. So if we think about it, there's 2 restrictions that come. It's December 15th with an initial signing of most free agents. But if you use bird rights to give a guy a big enough bump, it's January 15th. So they can't trade him anywhere till January 15th. Then the kicker on top of that is for 1 year, because they exercise their right of first refusal. That's the technical term for matching. Then they can't trade him anywhere without his permission. So he has, in effect, a 1 year no trade clause as well, where he can block any trade, but he definitely cannot be traded to the Indiana Pacers for 1 year.
So if you're the Suns and you are not all in on DeAndre Ayton, and that is the sense that we've gotten, matching is not an ideal situation then, right? You're paying him the contract that you probably don't want to pay him, and trading him at least for a year is fairly problematic because he does have the ability to block that. If there's a contentious relationship there at all, you can see where DeAndre Ayton would just say, no, I'm not playing your game, so I'm going to block trade. So now you're looking at potentially paying DeAndre Ayton a contract that clearly the Suns don't want to pay him for at least a year if they match that. On the flip side, if you don't match, you lose him for nothing. That doesn't sound like a great spot for the Suns to be in, and all the more reason to try to figure out a sign and trade.
Agreed. I think I would imagine the Pacers don't have a lot of interest in keeping Miles Turner if they can get DeAndre Ayton. They can't play together. This is not a Turner Sabonis pairing because it just wouldn't. They're both truly more of 5s than either one is a 4. You just re-signed Jalen Smith. You have Goga Batadze. They also have Isaiah Jackson, who came along pretty well last season. So I don't think you want to do anything towards keeping Miles Turner in this situation. So my point all along has kind of been, why do you not just take Turner back? Even if Turner's not a perfect fit and you don't love him here, why would you not bring him in? And then if nothing else, that's $18 million trade piece down the line later that you have in another trade if you want to do that. And I actually think Turner could be a decent fit for Phoenix, but it's at least a get by for nothing else for at least the next few months. And then you can always retrade him later if that's what you want to do. So that becomes a little bit of the sticking point, I think, there. I think it's just I think it's just one of those things where I don't want to lose him for absolutely nothing because that would become a challenge.
Yeah, and that's the spot that the Suns are in right now. And look, this is you got to be careful here if you're Phoenix. You're a championship caliber
Mhm.
team. And if you don't get something here, you fall down that ladder in a very, very deep Western Conference very quickly. Particularly, like you said, what center are they going to go at?
Yeah,
Right? I mean,
nuts.
Bismack Biyombo could be their starting center. They lost JaVale McGee too, who they were
Mm-hmm.
very high on, wound up
Yep.
going over to the Mavs. So Phoenix is in a perilous spot as of this moment. For the Pacers, look, if they don't get Ayton, they're kind of rebuilding anyway, and it's not the end of the world if they don't wind up getting
Yep.
him, if the Suns wind up matching. But for the Suns, this this is tricky, and they've got to make sure that they manage this correctly. Otherwise, they could find themselves suddenly with an older Chris Paul and losing a key piece on what was a contending team and might not be anymore if you have Ayton walk away for nothing.
Absolutely. That's exactly it. And you mentioned the West is so deep. It is so tricky to make that work. There's a question in the chat from JP who says, when you do a sign and trade, doesn't the outgoing salary get cut in half? It's not exactly in a sign and trade. It's more based on the amount of the raise. In this case, yes. DeAndre Ayton would get cut. His salary would get cut in half. So let's just call it 15 million because it's roughly 30 million that he would make. And what happens though is that's 15 million on the Sun side outgoing. It's 30 million coming in on the Pacers side. But what happens is the Pacers have more, they're going to have enough cap space to bring them in. And then the Suns, anything 15 million matches in a trade, they can bring back their way. And Miles Turner's $18 million salary fits that perfectly. So there would not be any kind of problem there. There's other options, obviously, too. But that one fits kind of easiest to make match there. I want to throw this just to the chat real quick. If you guys can just, because I'm testing out all new computer equipment, if you guys can tell me how the picture quality and sound quality is, I would appreciate it. We're just trying to make sure we're giving you guys a better show than the crap it's been on my end for the last couple of weeks.
Looks better to me. Definitely looks
Well,
better to
that's all
me.
that really matters in my heart then. And I'm
JP
happy.
says JP says everything is great now. So that's
All right,
fantastic.
good.
Makes
Oh
us
man,
way
we're getting
better.
way better. Looks good. I'm just
Fantastic.
waiting for somebody like, why? But yeah, but you're still ugly, and nobody said that.
Oh,
I appreciate
no.
that. So, yeah. So this one's really interesting. A couple people asked, in there, like, is it midnight? Like, what does that mean? Essentially, what they're looking to do here is if they're going to do it today, the clock starts at midnight. But it's whenever he signs that offer sheet. So if he signed it right now, sign and trades are out. Like that's it. If he signs
Correct.
it today, sign and trades are out. You can't do it. You can't change your mind. You can't do anything like that. It's just gonna roll. So what you end up having to do is midnight though is when it starts. It'd be what's today's Thursday, so it'd be Friday and Saturday. By end of day Saturday would be the time that they have to go. Still looking pretty. I appreciate it, Jeff Sherrill in
So
the chat.
so in theory then, and this was something I didn't know that. I didn't know that the clock starts at midnight. So
Yeah.
if he signed it now, the clock still starts at midnight. So if you're the Pacers and you at least want to try to keep your options open for a sign and trade, you might as well just schedule him to sign it at
Yeah.
11:55
Yep.
p.m. Eastern, right? I mean,
Yep.
that would be your ideal situation if the clock's going to start at the same time regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Keep it open. Just keep pushing, keep pushing into doing stuff with everybody there. Just to keep going with hey, do you change your mind yet? Change your mind yet? Change your mind yet? It's almost like that old Simpsons episode. Can we go to the I forget what the music Krusty Land? Can we go,
Oh,
Dad? Can
that's
we
right.
go,
Can we
Dad?
go,
Can we
Dad?
go,
Can we
Dad?
go, Dad? Yep. Oh,
So
that's an old one.
keep
That's
doing
back
that.
in the
So
day.
yeah. Yeah.
Good one.
So yeah, it is yeah, it is an old one. That was that's like a first couple seasons someone. But anyway,
Back when it was really good.
yes, exactly. Back in the glory days of The Simpsons. So Jerry Sanchez asked, are my a former cast member? Yes, those are my Disney name tags. I worked for Disney for 20 years before I left to cover the NBA. So yes, Jerry Sanchez, I did.
That's right.
So let's see where this goes over the next, call it 4.5 5 hours here. We'll see how this comes together on this one, because I think it's this is pretty fascinating the way this could all come together. People are asking things like, can KD still be involved? Yeah, I mean, they could still expand this into a 3-team trade and all sorts of stuff and everything. So we'll see what it looks like with that. We don't know where that all comes together.
Mhm. Yeah, we'll see. Let's get into that actually. So we've talked about how something needs to give in the NBA. Something needs to shift the status quo because right now everything's been just deadlocked, right? With this Kevin Durant thing. I mean, we're even seeing like Colin Sexton just sitting out there, just stuck, right? Nothing happening.
Mhm.
I don't know what the ripple effect from this Ayton situation is going to be. I guess it depends. Like, do other teams get pulled in or not? Were other teams trying to be in on the Ayton situation and now they're not? So now they're going to look at other options. What happens here? But this has the potential to be that thing that suddenly clears this logjam or opens things up enough to where we start to see more movement and the stagnation lifts. Now, a Kevin Durant trade would be a clear thing that would open things up again
Sure.
and get things moving. But I do wonder if this is enough to at least shake some things loose and restart the NBA offseason, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah, I mean it is. That's exactly what we've been saying for a while. It's like there's like a clog in the pipeline here. We need something to come through, hit it, and push all the rest of this through. Because now we're sitting with KD, Kyrie, now Donovan Mitchell. We're gonna get to him in just a minute here. But Ayton's for restricted free agent market. Colin Sexton. We're gonna leave Miles Bridges out of that because that's a whole different situation with that. But yeah, well, we'll see where that goes. Trevor, we have a super chat coming in.
Yeah, super chat from Samir says the report about Phoenix wanting to match, can that be a negotiation strategy? We see teams do this a lot where they will kind of let it be known that they'll match any offer as a way of scaring off other teams from actually presenting that offer. So yes, this can be, again, there's not as much teeth to it as there would be if that was getting out there on say July 1st or July 2nd when there's free agents still on the market to be had. But yes, that type of statement getting out there or word getting out there can 100% be a negotiating strategy.
Yeah. Now, one thing I will say with the Kevin Durant trade here, as we're talking about him, if Ayton is off the table, it becomes really hard then for the Suns to make a KD trade because Ayton was going to be a portion of that. I believe, if I have this correct, I think I've run the numbers right on this. Ayton and Bridges, even with the base year compensation issues, would have been enough if Brooklyn could get around the hard cap issues of acquiring a player via sign and trade. So they would have had to do some different stuff. So we'll see how that comes together there. But yeah, it's it is what it is. With that one. So yeah, let's see, how that all comes together over the next couple days, really the next few hours here. If Ayton signs the offer sheet, then it's that's all null and void. So that won't happen that way. But yeah, I'm very, very interested to see where all this comes together.
Yeah, if Ayton, but the bottom line I think is that if Ayton signs that offer sheet, it's bad for Phoenix.
Yeah.
Right? Either way, like you're either because clearly they don't believe that Ayton should have that contract, otherwise they would have already offered it to him. Or they, if they don't match, they lose him for nothing. But it's also eliminating the possibility of using Ayton as a piece to go and get Kevin Durant, whether that meant Ayton going to a third team and that team sending stuff to Brooklyn, whatever. It hurts the Suns' ability to go get KD. And I've seen the sentiment floating around on the Twitter sphere. A lot of people saying, if Kevin Durant is traded, this should push the odds of the Toronto Raptors way up if this Ayton situation goes down this way. Whether regardless of where he winds up, if he signs that offer sheet, it increases the odds of the Raptors being the team that should be in the lead to get KD.
Yeah, I hadn't really given it a lot of thought to that side of it, but yeah, I think that makes sense. To that respect, I think for sure that can work. Hey, let's just before we close the book on the Ayton stuff and move on, just so we get a sense of what's still available free agent wise. So these are kind of more 4-5 guys. So Montrezl Harrell, Blake Griffin, Paul Millsap. That's not very great. True fives, DeMarcus Cousins, LaMarcus Aldridge, Hassan Whiteside, Dwight Howard, Tristan Thompson. That's kind of it, for guys that you, I think, might even feel good-ish about plugging in your rotation. So certainly no one as good as DeAndre Ayton. And I wouldn't think, in my opinion, no one as good as even acquiring Miles Turner for what his contract is, even again, if it's not a perfect fit. Go get Miles Turner, pair him with Biyombo, and sign a Hassan Whiteside or something. And I think then you've come out of this better than just watching DeAndre Ayton walk away for nothing.
Here's the thing. Last summer, you and I both of us were talking about how surprised we were that the Suns weren't just getting a deal done with Ayton, right? Mm-hmm. They did it with Mikal Bridges, and they just couldn't come to an agreement with DeAndre Ayton. Right now, had they done that deal, there would be some kind of a trade market for Ayton if they decided after this year, you know what, we just don't think he's worth this contract. Yep. Let's see what we can get for him. Let's see what we can move him. Now they're staring down potentially losing him for nothing. Had they just done what it, and we weren't the only ones saying this, but a lot of people across the NBA were saying, why don't they just get this thing done? They would be sitting in a much better position now had they just done that. Instead, they decided to try to play hardball, and it could come back to haunt them here.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's do prediction time. What do you think happens?
I think ultimately we land on a sign and trade. It makes too much sense for the Suns. I think they're in a position of weakness at this point. So I think we ultimately wind up with a sign and trade that gets the Suns something. I think it makes sense.
That's what I'm hoping for happens. I'm gonna say the Suns just match and they keep Ayton and then this. But by the trade deadline, he's somewhere else.
By the trade deadline. So they match it and then they trade him away.
Yeah, match it, keep him for a few months, then they find a place where he'll be happy and off he goes.
That makes sense. Yep. We got a super chat that came in here and said, hey, Keith, Joe Lacob did a pod with Tim of the Bay Area the other day. It said he can't pay Wiggins and Poole. Is it cheaper to get KD instead and trade those guys away?
I mean, I didn't hear this pod, so throw a name of the pod up there because I'd like to listen to it. If you can, drop that in the chat there. Yeah. No cap 757. Is it cheaper to get KD instead and trade those guys?
Depends on what kind of money they'd be getting on their next deals.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Wiggins right now is 30+ million. Poole's probably going to be a $25 million player. So yeah, I mean, maybe, we'll see. You're talking 55, 60 million for those two guys, and KD's going to top out 40, 50, but then you got to replace at least one rotation spot because you lose Poole. So yeah, I mean, it could be cheaper. It's not going to save a significant amount by any means, but if that's where they want to go, sure. But I mean, there's other options for them. I will say to everybody, there's been a lot of talk about the Warriors and is their spending bad for the NBA and is that not good? I wrote a thing on Spot Track basically where I said, what are they supposed to do? Lose their guys for nothing? Right. Like they drafted and developed these guys. So if anybody wants to check that out.
It's like the people who are mad at them for getting Kevin Durant and saying that they made the league unfair or whatever for however many years. Like what Kevin Durant said he would play for them. What were they supposed to say? No, you know what, KD, sorry, we would be too good. We would be too good with you. We don't want you. No, of course not.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right, let's move on. Let's talk about Donovan Mitchell and the Knicks. After we recorded yesterday, we talked all about the links between Donovan Mitchell and the Knicks. And then after we recorded yesterday, everything kind of blew up. And it sounded like now the report is that while there's other suitors for Donovan Mitchell, the Jazz and the Knicks have been negotiating one-on-one in a scenario that would send a lot of picks to the Utah Jazz. Reportedly, that's what they're after. So from the Utah side, we're talking full rebuild, tear it down, if they're looking to just get picks for Donovan Mitchell, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that decision. For the Knicks, landing the guy that feels like they've been linked to forever. This is one of those situations where it feels like this news could and should break at any moment that they've come to an agreement. Once you get to the point where word gets out that they're negotiating exclusively with each other, typically a deal is not far behind.
Yeah, Trevor, do I need to do one of these? And people are saying I'm store brand Windhorse. I'll take that. That's a compliment. He's very good at what he does. But anyway, it's I think you guys know my feelings on this. Anytime we get into very specifics about stuff like number of picks and players involved and those kind of things, players not involved, then I am in a position where, okay, this now makes sense. To this, you guys can stop putting fake trades in the chat. We have our notifications on. We would know if that happened. So anyway, it's My guess is I don't want to go as far as saying it's the Knicks deal to lose or
Sure.
anything like that, because I don't think it's quite there. But I do think it is my guess is that they're pushing for it pretty hard, and we'll see where it comes together. And in terms of young players with upside, so whether it be Obi Toppin, Emmanuel Quickly, or if it got what you would call it, who am I missing? Quentin Grimes. You could get all those guys, maybe get 5 or 6 picks, because the Knicks have all their own picks. They have an extra Dallas pick, and they have the extra picks that they got at draft night as well. So you could start throwing a whole bunch of stuff together, send it Utah's way. And I've said it over and over and over again. If Danny Ainge is tearing it down, he's tearing that thing all the way down to the studs and starting over. Even think about when he did that in Boston, when he traded KG and Pierce. The initial thought was, all right, they're going to build around Rajon Rondo as their kind of young building block moving forward. He didn't even make it through January of the next year, and then he got traded away. So, so that's just he's going to rip this thing all the way down. So, my guess is you're absolutely right. I think at any point now we're getting a Woj bomb here, or Shams. Are we still doing Shams Wow or what?
I don't know. We know nothing ever just settled in and felt like organic, so
yeah. So but we're gonna get that notification bell ding that says Donovan Mitchell's been traded, and I think maybe to the Knicks.
Hopefully it's during the show so I can play our drop again.
That'd be nice. I would have. Yeah, that'd be fun. We haven't had a chance to play that in a bit.
Alan Stefante says, "You guys are awesome. I appreciate what you guys do." Thank you, Alan. Are the Nets trying to get leverage by saying a Lowry and Irving trade is not out of the question? That was something that got floated around a little bit today. Yeah. I believe that was a Frank Isola thing, who said that that some type of Lowry and Kyrie swap is not out of the question there. Is that a Nets putting that out there to try to gain more traction? Because look, if you look at the situation right now, the Nets want any other team to be interested in Kyrie Irving so that they can have that leverage in whatever the negotiations are. Is that what you take it as, or do you think that a Lowry Kyrie swap could be a real thing?
I mean, maybe. I just don't. I don't see Kyrie as being a Heat kind of guy. I guess it just doesn't. Something feels off there to me. So, but I mean, maybe it could be. You'd be trading. Gosh, Kyrie's got to be 5 years younger than Lowry at least. So you'd be trading in on that side. So yeah, maybe that's the way that goes. But it's I don't know. That one seems a little weird for this to me. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, yeah, they want that leverage so then they can go back to the Lakers and say, hey, what do you think about that second pick now? Or are we good?
Let me ask you this, because the Lakers Nation staff and I were talking about this today. Who would you rather have contract factored in, Kyle Lowry or Russell Westbrook?
Kyle Lowry.
With the contract, he's got an extra $15 million or so owed in an extra year.
Mm-hmm. Kyle Lowry. I don't think it's close.
I went the opposite because of the expiring, but maybe I've got some bias in there.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't just watch him for 82 games, so I'm probably not in the same spot you're in. Yeah, I'd take Kyle Lowry.
Fair enough. I think we were going back and forth on, depending on the roster, is that what you want? And then contractually, if you're trying to rebuild, there's a lot of nuance into that.
I mean, if you're the Lakers right now, I'd rather have Kyle Lowry just because you're set up to win in the next couple years, and Lowry would be far more plug and play with that group. But I don't know.
It's a tough one. Well, and you got to see Lowry a bit in the playoffs too, but he was also dealing with injury there.
I will say I'm a little worried. Lowry is slipping fast, and we see that with the smaller guards. When it goes very, very quickly. And some of those injuries now start to seem like they might be injuries that are kind of piling up on him that he may not get over very, very easily.
Unfortunate. Hate to see it. And hopefully he continues to plug along. But let's talk a little bit about my guy KCP, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope.
Yeah,
gets an extension, and I thought a pretty reasonable one for a guy who does the things that he does, and pretty similar to the deal that he's on now. So the Nuggets just said, "Hey, look, this is solid. Let's keep this rolling." And I think he's going to be a good fit there in Denver with his ability to space the floor. He's quick. Like, we don't give him enough credit for that. He's really fast, and so he gets out of the break pretty well. Not a great finisher on the break, but he can get out there and run it. And then defensively, he's a pretty good lock and trail guy. So I think this is a nice move for the Nuggets to hang on to.
Yeah, between him and Bruce Brown, they've got the perimeter defense now. You know, they're going to be able to put those two guys out there on the floor at times with Jokic and Murray, and the defense should hold up just fine with those two guys. So yeah, I mean they're pretty locked in now to this group there for the next couple of years. But I think it's okay. I think you're at the point in their development timeline where if Murray and Porter are both healthy, and we're going to talk about those two in a second, where you need to be locking in guys. So you're basically, all right, this is our window over the next 3 seasons here or so. And then if it doesn't work out, then we can start making some different decisions around, all right, do we look to move on from Murray or Porter and rebalance around Jokic in a different way? Because clearly he's not going anywhere. So it's just about adding all that talent around him. And I think that's the best way to do it. I think that this is a very reasonable deal, 2-year, $30 million extension for KCP. Perfectly reasonable. It just kind of makes me laugh. I'm thinking back to, remember all those conversations long before the front office show days when I would come on the Lakers Nation pod and we talk about KCP and his no trade clause kind of being like the thing that would screw up everything for the Lakers at time. Between that and the Luol Deng, stretched money, we probably had more conversations about those two things.
Oh, we did.
Than almost anything else.
We did. And that was when KCP would get 18, 19 million, something like that for one season. I remember at the time they had to get rid of David Nwaba in order to get KCP. And I was upset. I'm like, I like David Nwaba. Keep him around. But it all worked out in the end, giving him that 1-year deal. I think also gave the Lakers a little bit of, because the client and all that, gave him a little bit of a line to Rich Paul, and ultimately led to LeBron. But
certainly
in any event,
he was a big part of winning a championship. So
for sure,
that frees him of anything else he might have been still had attached to him. The other thing on the two Nuggets guys, Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr., nothing major and nothing I think to be super alarmed about, but Michael Malone on the broadcast at Summer League yesterday did say likely a minutes restriction for the two of them to start the year. I think that's fine. As long as it's reasonable, if it's 25, 30 minutes, that's not the end of the world. Probably ideally, you don't want to play much more than that anyway, early on in the season, but just something to keep an eye on. But both of those guys have said they're healthy, and both of those guys feel like they're ready to start the season. So good news there on the Nuggets front.
Absolutely. And then we've got, we didn't get to this yesterday, Pat Connaughton received an extension as well with Milwaukee Bucks. Yeah. So that's a solid, no problem with that. He's an underrated rebounder. He's got the ability to shoot the three for you. And
perfect in everything.
Yeah, you can plug him into the starting lineup when need be. If you need him off the bench, he can do that. He can pretty much do whatever you need him to do.
He's one of the rare players who loses almost nothing efficiency-wise starting or coming off the bench. He's basically the same guy no matter what, which is good because he's good. That can be bad if the player stinks, obviously, but he's pretty good there. So yeah.
And I will say on a personal note, when I was in Vegas for Summer League, I hosted 2 events for kids that included Pat Connaughton. Dorian Finney-Smith was involved one day. DeMar DeRozan was involved as well. And seeing the way Pat worked with those kids and getting to chat with him for a bit, about kind of just the way he approaches things, he was absolutely incredible. He was just in his element, working with all these kids, just having so much fun with them, coaching them up. I will forever be a Pat Connaughton fan now, seeing the way that he was around those kids and really not just showing up to smile and wave or anything like that, but getting out there, playing with the kids, working with them, and really going out of his way to make the day for those kids.
Do you know why? Why he's such a good guy?
I have a feeling you're going to tell me why here.
Because he's from Massachusetts. So we had someone say, start breaking these long pod shows into 10-minute clips. We have a clips channel, Trevor.
We do. We've got our clips channel that is set up. There is a link in the description of our last video that was posted to our YouTube channel. I'll put that one over here as well. And that one is in a super chat. So start breaking these long shows into 10-minute clips. You're leaving a lot of money on the table. Look, we have our clips channel that's set up, and just definitely go check it out and go subscribe. I'll see if I can find the link in just a second here.
Someone asked, did the Hornets ever officially pull the offer sheet? It wasn't an offer sheet, it's this qualifying offer for Miles Bridges. They did not. There's a couple ways to think through that. I think one of the thoughts around why they wouldn't pull that qualifying offer is leaving him restricted makes it less likely another team will swoop in and sign him because the Hornets could just match it. So I think I think though 29 teams. No, hey, right now that's the Hornets issue to kind of deal with. So we're going to leave that alone and go from there.
Yep. Yeah, we'll see what they ultimately do
Yeah,
with that situation.
I'll be surprised unless we get some kind of major reveal that we're not expecting if Miles Bridges is playing basketball at the beginning of the season. I think he'll just be still sitting there as an unresolved free agent for a while.
Right. Well, I was hoping
I know, me too. I was trying to drag it out.
I was hoping something would break while we were live so we could play one of our drops. But next time, hopefully it'll happen then. But appreciate everybody for joining us here live today. Obviously, the DeAndre Ayton news, it reignited the NBA for at least a few hours today. And I'm hopeful that we're going to get more of that.
Oh, man, we needed it. Yeah.
It feels like we've been held hostage by Kevin Durant and the Nets for the last week, where everything has just been completely held down by that. We have had nothing really moving because of that whole situation. So hopefully this is what the market needs to kind of break things loose and get things moving once again.
Trevor, somebody wants to know if you have a Lakers Nation show tonight.
So tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to go and do a Twitter Spaces on the Lakers Nation account, and that's going to start at 9:00 Pacific time. We'll have that. We're going to have most of the Lakers Nation crew will be on there with me. So be on the lookout for that. In fact, the show is already scheduled. If you want to go check that out on the at Lakers Nation Twitter account. So that's what we're going to have coming up this evening.
There you go.
All right, everybody.
I will listen to that pod. I'm gonna put that on the download list today. So I will definitely listen to that pod.
Yep, we'll have to check that one out.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks everybody for stopping by and listening and watching. Appreciate you. If you are listening to the podcast version of this, make sure you do subscribe over on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching us on video, make sure you are a subscriber over on the NBA Front Office channel.
Trevor, I want to read a review.
Oh, yes. I forgot about that.
Yeah, we said we were going to do this. I want to read this one because this one was fun. So this is from Stock Loan. I'm guessing maybe a Stockton Malone fan from back in the day. But he said, I like it. Listening to the NBA Front Office podcast since it was just Keith and Pete. So that's Pete Toll. I don't see Pete in here tonight, but Pete's often hanging out in the chat when we're live. Then Keith, Pete, and Con. That was Connorell. He was there hanging out with us too for a while. Then it was radio silence for way too long. So excited that the show returned. Honestly, at first, I was very unsure of Trevor, but he does a great job keeping things fun. Banter is just the right amount of silly. Keith is an NFT NBA fan treasure. I don't know about all that. And I say that with complete sincerity. It's a little bit longer, but if you listen to every episode, I guarantee you will be the most knowledgeable NBA fan out of your coworkers, friends, and family by a long shot. I also appreciate their level-headed approach to NBA drama. They've calmed me down quite a few times by talking about all perspectives. Finally, bring back the elevator music intro, if only for the off season. Best podcast intro music of all time. Yeah. So we appreciate that review. So guys, if you can pop over to iTunes and give us a rating and review over on iTunes, we would appreciate that, as well as all of your subscriptions here. Sorry guys, no news. Sorry about that.
I know. I thought the same thing. I get to play the drop, but that review was fantastic and very much appreciated. We did get, while you were reading the review, we got a $20 super chat, so we need to address this. Said, I appreciate the great content, guys. Thank you. Revon said, Keith, any of the Celtics Summer League players going to make the team? I saw them against the Warriors Tuesday in Vegas. Justin Jackson looked great.
Yeah, Justin Jackson's an interesting guy. They had him during the COVID call-ups, and he's kind of bounced around. I think the probably best chances of the Summer League player, non-rostered Summer League players played for Boston. I think Trevion Williams and Fiondu Kabengele have the best chance to maybe snag a roster spot or at a very minimum a camp invite. Right now, it seems like they're maybe open to keeping that second two-way spot open. I do think we might see Broderick Thomas, but Boston still has 3 standard spots to fill. They have their 3 camp spots to fill, if that's what we want to call them, and a 2-way. So they've got 7 open roster spots right now to fill. So there's a whole bunch of movement still to come from the Celtics and camp signings and all that sort of stuff. But Ravon, man, and we appreciate that.
Very much.
That's big time. Thank you so much.
Yep, very much appreciated. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Till next time. See ya and stay safe.